Please be seated. So we've all heard of the Sermon on the Mount, but today's reading isn't from that version. Today we hear from the Gospel of Luke in what's often called the Sermon on the Plain. This version of the Beatitudes begins with a striking change. In the verse before what we just heard, Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Take that in for a second. He came down from the mountain. Down to the people. Down to where the broken and the hungry and the weary were standing. This movement is about a whole lot more than geography. It's about theology. Jesus doesn't elevate himself to make a point. He descends to the people to make a connection. It's a sermon preached eye to eye. He descends to where he can see the needs on each of their faces. Not as a great crowd, not as categories on a poll, but as individuals. And Jesus speaks to each of them. A woman in rags, struggling to feed her children, hears, "Blessed are you who are poor." And for the first time in years, she feels like she matters. A hungry youth looks up when Jesus says, "Blessed are you who are hungry now." And for the moment, he knows that he's not invisible. The mother, still grieving the lost child, meets Jesus' eyes as he said, "Blessed are you who weep." And those tears finally flow. The man who's always been shunned for his limp or his accent, silence, takes a deep breath when Jesus says, "Blessed are you when people revile you." He's never been called blessed before. To be seen by Jesus is to be restored, not fixed, not tolerated, but honored as one who is already beloved. And as Jesus' disciples, we continue this work today. It happens when a trans person hears their name said reverently in prayer, and their pronouns are honored in coffee hour. It happens when the woman asking for food is met with a warm cup of coffee instead of suspicion. It happens when our children with autism are fully welcomed at the potluck, not just tolerated, but loved and greeted with a favorite toy. It happens when the immigrant hears their child read the scripture in 2 languages and knows that they have found a safe home. To be seen is not just a moment of attention. It is a moment of blessing. I was reminded last week, if there is one thing that I know to my absolute core, I understand this about God. God only has one category: beloved child. Not worthy or unworthy. Not insider or outsider. Not even saved or sinner, as much as we use those words. Just beloved child. You can't fall outside. Because Jesus doesn't sort people. Jesus sees people. Every beatitude in today's gospel undoes a human category and replaces it with simple divine belonging. And that's why the field is level. Because God's love is limitless. And Jesus was not afraid to walk amongst the crowds, openly proclaiming the belovedness of every person there and sharing God's unlimited blessing. Now, I know, though, that sometimes we struggle in this complex and chaotic world to follow his example. But I also know it's not about cruelty or ignorance. It's about fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear of what others may think when we show compassion that breaks their rules. Fear that if we see them as beloved, no one will see us that way. But that is the lie of this world. That is what culture tries to convince us. That love is scarce like money. That belonging is limited and only for a few. Jesus shatters that illusion by simply stepping out onto the plain and walking amongst the most vulnerable, standing shoulder to shoulder with them. Instead of building fences to weaken and isolate, Jesus draws that circle of inclusion wider and wider. And when he steps out onto the plain, he's inviting us to follow his lead. I bet you can imagine it. Walking through our town, everybody knows each other. Imagine not worrying about status, but seeing the people as Jesus did, with the eyes of blessing. Right? Picture it. A lovely afternoon downtown in Depot Park. Children are running through the grass. Somebody's rushing back to work after a late lunch. Maybe some students are taking a break between classes. Some lovebirds are sitting on a bench talking over coffee. And what if instead of rushing past or staring at our phones, we walked with them for a moment? What if we meet them on the plain? If we carry the same gaze Jesus did, the gaze that says, I see you. You are not a problem to be solved. You are not an interruption to a busy day. You are not less than. You are worthy. And you are always beloved. This is the invitation to All Saints' Day. Not just to remember the prophets that went before us, but to learn from their witness and to continue to walk with the most vulnerable, to live as prophets of love, to lay the foundations for future generations to know that they are beloved every day. To walk out on that level plane with Jesus and expand the great circle of God's love. But you already know how to do this, friends. I've seen you. When we show up for youth, providing a safe place for the courageous and unique souls. When we open the parish hall for community meals and pride events and refugee support, when we sit with each other in waiting rooms by hospital beds, at voting booths, you show God's love. You are empowered by that love to live boldly, not cautiously, not conditionally, but prophetically, like the prophets of old. On All Saints' Day, that's who we remember. The prophets of love. So, when they look back on us someday, years from now, maybe there's pictures in the history hall, I hope they say, they saw me. They treated me like I mattered. They loved without flinching. Because you do. And you can. And you will. Because you're beloved. And you're bold. And so you will continue to grow the fellowship of saints as you live into being prophets of love.